Okay, so hi everyone, my name's Amelia Kramer. I'm the owner here at Upwards Art Studio. I know this is the same intro every time. So today we do bi-weekly demos of different products that we stock in the store. This week is going to be Gamblin Cold Wax. So our store is open Monday to Friday, 10 to 6, and Saturdays, 10 to 4. In the summer, the Sundays will start up again. We regularly run classes. You can, well, not on the video, but everyone else can see that there is griddles set up for an encaustic intro this afternoon. There is still room if you don't have anything to do this afternoon. And then our online store is open 24/7. It has our complete inventory. It's updated every hour. The website is upwardsartstudio.com. And you can online shop. So you could also make wish lists for yourself so that you can, make the list and either bring it yourself and pick out your things, or send it to a significant other and they can pick it. They can come to the store and get the things that you actually want and not just a gift card, right? So it seems more personalized. And then you can also order online and then come and pick up in store. So that's available locally. So let's get started with the demo. I'm going to switch cameras here. Move spotlight, and then this is in that one. Spotlight for everyone. There we go. Okay, so we're going to do we're going to do Gamblin Cold Wax. Gamblin is a paint company in the US. All of their paints are beautiful, just gorgeous. So if you're used to working with acrylic, this is basically like the golden, but like a higher end golden than, for oil paint. The color load is beautiful. The color selection is beautiful. We do have the large tubes in store, a selection of them. And then we have a selection of the smaller tubes. And with the smaller tubes, we have the professional line and also the student line. So their student line, it's called 1980. And then their professional line just is called Gamblin Paints.
What would be the difference between the professional and
it's the pigment load. Yeah, so the student brand has more binder to pigment than the professional line. Same with any other paint line, that's basically the difference. Some of the paint companies, like a lower end paint company, would change the pigments, but paint companies like Liquitex and Gamblin and like higher end paint companies that have a student line, it's just more binder to pigment. It's still the same pigment, just a different load. So with that being said, these are available in different sizes. This one's kind of like the small, not the tiniest, but the next size up. So the tiniest is like a little, kind of not sample, but if you're just trying it out and want to see how it works, that's a great option. Once you get right into it, they do have the big, and we have them in stock, the big paint cans. Like if you're, like when you're painting your house, it's the 1.3 liter or something like that, right? So this is kind of, these ones are nice because they're portable, right? If you're going to a class with them, these are, not that heavy, whereas the big paint ones can be heavy. You can also, if you get the big one, you can also put it into glass jars or something just to like easily pour it around. Like if you are going to somewhere where you can have oil paint, like in a class or something, then that's kind of a way to move it around from the bigger ones. Oh, and I did have speaking notes. Okay, so I'm just going to open it here. You do need a paint can opener or like a screwdriver. And I'm going to put some gloves on because it does have solvent in it. So let's protect ourselves, unlike Bob Ross, right? Or Bob Ross. So this is what it looks like in the jar. So it looks like lard.
Oh, it does.
Yeah.
it's very thick.
It is very thick. So it's made out of beeswax, linseed oil, and odorless mineral spirits. So you can make this yourself. You do need a double boiler and all that stuff. I'm not doing that today. That would be a separate thing on how to make this. And because they're solvents, you have to, remove your double boiler from the heat, add the solvents, and then
not
stir.
worth it.
It's a lot of work, but it's something that you can make yourself, right? Like most art supplies, you can
Yeah,
make yourself.
but I'd be worried about the solvents and everything breathing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So safety with it, just like any other oil paint, you have to treat it like oil paint because of the solvent. So not just throwing your paper towel or your rags in a ball and then into your garbage. They need to be dried out flat and then disposed of. So with my oily rags, like these ones have been dried, and then we keep reusing them until they're like done, right?
So you have a background for a piece of butter.
Yeah. So once they're completely full and they've dried, then we stuff them into an empty paint can, close it up, and then it goes with hazardous waste. So on the hazardous waste days here, we just take a bunch of them and say they're oily rags, and then they dispose of them. Also, obviously, we kind of talked about this. I put gloves on. If you're really, if you're sensitive to smells, I would do this with a window open or something, just like regular oil painting, because there is solvent. And the issue with the odorless is that you can't smell if it's getting really in the air, like a lot. So having that extra ventilation just keeps you safe. Again, we don't want a Bob Ross situation. Yeah. So, okay. So you can use it with regular oil paint. So I have a selection. I don't want to move that too far. I have a selection of different oil paints here. So there's Gamblin, Kama, this is Lucas, Georgian. So it works with any brand of oil paint. And then it also works with the water mixable oil as well. So if you're more apt to use the water mixable and those clean with water instead of with solvents, they're a good option just because the cleanup is a lot easier. Yeah, we have the Georgian line in the store, but we can get other paint brands. If there's a specific, like this Holbein one, this color is gorgeous. It's like a horizon blue or something. It is like, yeah, so we're gonna try it. Try it. I'm already into it. You can use pigment sticks. So these are RNF pigment sticks. I'll show you how to use them. This is just kind of what they look like when they come in the store. Actually, this is a sample size, so they're basically twice as big.
Is that the same as Shiva?
It's a different, they're not, or they're juicier than Shiva.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. They're handmade in small, RNF, all they make is paint and paint that goes with encaustic. So this can be used with encaustic, and it can also be used with cold wax, but it's like a tube oil paint, just less linseed oil. Actually, there's no solvent in it at all.
So if you wanted to use some of your stencils, say with leaves or things, then you and you were going to use the cold wax over top, you should not use Shiva, then you should use that.
You can use either. I'm not saying
can?
one is better than
Okay.
the one is. They're just different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So when I get into these, you'll see how juicy they are and how.
Because I find the other, you waste so much peeling back.
Yeah. These do form a skin, right? And they're supposed to.
Yeah.
To keep all the paint still in there. So like you can see in my box, the video won't be able to see, like I keep them out of these tubes once I open them, because they will stick to these and you'll never be able to get them out without cutting all of the plastic. So they just, when I'm done with them, I just throw them in my cardboard box, and they form the skin and don't stick together. They might stick together a little bit, but just enough that it's easy.
Sort of like stencil.
Yeah.
The old-fashioned stencil, crayons that there's a skin, you just peel that off each time.
Yeah.
And I think they're oil based.
Yeah. And you can also use dry pigment. and other things that are dried. So like ash or pumice stone that you've grated up or something, and you can use all of those things with that, with this as well. So there's lots of different things that you could add to it, or even like if you have crushed up mica or something, adding a bit with your paint can give that like shimmeriness that
Yeah.
isn't iridescent, right? Like it's, yeah. So, and like mica we can find in the ground here. So if you're really cognizant about, or like it's really important to use things that are natural to your space, then you can find lots of things that to add to it. Okay, so that's okay. Let's get some of this stuff out of the way. Okay, so those are the paints. Okay, so I'm going to work on Arches oil paper as well as a board. So you can work on canvas. I find with canvas it flexes, right? So you can't get, it's hard to get that extra pressure when you're putting stuff down and getting it even. So I find paper on a hard surface, like a hard tabletop, or one of the wooden panels is a better option. It's not that you can't do it on the canvas, but yeah. So Arches oil paper does not need any gesso. You can use like a watercolor paper, gesso it 3 times and do all that garbage.
Yeah, all that.
Yeah, Arches, you can go straight to oil. There's nothing, it's already treated to receive oil. It's not gonna like bleed through on the back and stuff. So it's a great option when you're an oil painter and you want to do like little studies. It comes in different sizes. This is a larger size, so it does come in 9 by 12. You can cut it with an X-Acto, right? So you could do little studies and have a little like, yeah.
Nice.
So that's,
Feel it. She feel it.
yeah, so it's nice thick paper.
Yeah.
On my example, I have, because I like having a border and I like my workstation clean, little obsessive about that. I taped around the outside with this purple tape. I find the purple tape, it's called, what is it called? Surface Delicate Surface. It's at Home Depot. You can buy it like in the 6-roll pack and stuff.
Oh,
So-
I've never seen it.
So it comes off paper super easily, right? Without tearing the paper. I like blue for other things. The green I never use, but the purple and the blue is what I use the most. And purple,
I have never seen
yeah.
that.
So if I'm right, if
I
I have gloves on, I can't. Yeah. So this gives me a border. So if I want to frame it under glass, it has something that the mat can sit to and not
Yeah, I
yeah.
get it.
without extra spacers. Okay. Okay, so let's make up some of this. So with, I'm just don't want to put that in your face. Okay, and I need to move this over a bit. Okay, so I'm going to get some wax out on my palette paper. You can use like a glass palette or anything that isn't going to, you know, don't use like the stay wet palettes, obviously.
I just have a piece of marble flooring. that-
Yep.
that's-
Okay, so this is the
Ooh,
That's
I
the blue
see
you're
what you're
talking
about.
saying. Mm.
so with this, I'm just gonna get some of the colors out. And I did get pliers in case they didn't open.
Mm.
Let's use some Gamblin because we are doing Gamblin. Oops.
So you're doing all the different ones to show us the different.
Yeah. And then I'm gonna remind me to do the pigment sticks.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not gonna do dry pigment because everybody needs a mask and we're not doing that. So with the cold wax, you can go up to 50-50 for regular painting. There's ways to thin it out more to more like a glaze, and that would be like this much with a little, you know, dip your brush in and then mix it, and that would go to a glaze.
Oh, so yeah.
So the wax dries clearer. So it's going to be a little bit less blue than like less baby blue, I guess, than that. Okay, so because it's not changing the color too much.
So is it just making it a little bit more transparent when you, for layering? Is
Oh
that
yeah,
the
I
idea?
forgot. Okay, so cold wax, if we're used to acrylic mediums, which lots of people are used to, this is a medium for oil paint. Just like it would be for acrylic paint.
So that is the.
So it adds body and texture, is way easier to achieve when this is mixed in. And it also makes everything super matte. So lots of oil paint is like on the satin side, and then you can add most of their additives make it glossy. This makes it super matte. So you can use both of those to create contrast, right? That you would have a super matte part of your painting. And then if you added some like alkyd to this as well, then you could make that part shiny, and it would be that other, like a visual contrast without it being texture or color or value. Yeah.
So I have the cold wax, and I used it over, well, I used the medium first and then put it over. You actually, it showed me that in here. Is that the same as that? Like, it's quite hard in the, like I rubbed it on with the cloth.
Yeah, that's the same thing. So if you're doing like I think I can't remember what
It's
what
in
it
a
was.
little jar, and it does have a white label, but I don't remember the name.
Yeah, I can barely
Yeah,
remember
okay, no, I just
yesterday.
wondered, oh,
So,
maybe I could try that with some.
yeah, so so when you're mixing it to just paint, it's about 50-50 or no more than 50-50. And then you just mix up your
That
paint
is such a
together.
beautiful color.
Right, so you can-
Texture too.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, so it holds the texture. And I'm just going to I'm just going to wipe it off on here, because like usually if I cared, I would wipe it off on a rag, but so let's mix up the red so that I have all these colors ready. And then obviously you can mix colors together, right, to get new colors. I'm just going to use them straight up so that you see what they look like.
I just had a question about the matte finish.
Yeah.
It used to be, and I can't remember what medium, if you used a nylon stocking
Mhm.
and rubbed it over it, it brought gloss to it.
So it does it a little bit, not like an encaustic does, where it goes shiny
Okay.
like glass. This will go a little bit, but more like on the matte side of satin.
Okay.
Yeah. And just put some here, and I've got some red,
So
so this
much
might
to
go a
learn,
little
isn't there?
brown. Yeah, so I've got a little bit of red, so it's going a little bit,
But that's interesting.
yeah, just shifting the color a little bit.
Mhm.
So you can apply it with a palette knife, right? You could, like, if you're used to painting with a palette knife, which I am obviously not, because that was not very good. Most people, when they're using it, they use these dough scrapers. So we have these in the store. And then to load it, you just get some paint kind of on the back of your palette knife, and then run it along. And I always hold it with the thing backwards, so that when I go to use it, it's the right way around. So I can be really, thick with it. I can add different colors. Oops, I should have loaded that a bit better. So I find that if I get it loaded kind of like kind of loaded on the side of my palette knife in that roll, then it goes on easier. And because it's all wet, you are working wet on wet.
Oh, I
It does
love
dry
that.
faster than regular oil paint. So if you need like like the paint to be touch dry, you could wait like a day, right? Instead of like waiting, or there's been in classes that I've used the right pigments, like the right paint color, that it was dry within a couple hours, right? That I could go, now it would be wet on dry, right? So that it wasn't always smudging the colors together. So I'm just gonna wipe this off, just because it's getting a little,
But I love that look.
yeah. So most people use this dough scraper to apply it. I know that a local artist here, Wendy Bashu, she's done it. She's used this to make realistic like birds.
Oh.
So she's obviously a lot more adapted.
So she uses that utensil.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so she had a series, I forget what it was for, mental health or something. And it was a big painting of birds in like coming out like a murmur thing, and they were all painted with a dough scraper.
Wow.
Yeah, so most of her work is pretty abstract, but yeah, so you paint in layers, right, just like any other paint application, and then you can use your scraper to kind of like make things more, right, that's kind of taking out all that blue that was there to make it more veiled. And I'm just getting many colors because I picked colors that are all opposite each other. You can apply it with a brush, right? So you would need your oil brushes, right? So you could, and obviously this gives you the texture of the brush. So depending on what you want the texture of the painting to look like, then depends on what tool you use.
Or you could use a tool that had cuts out of it, you know, like.
Yeah, so you can use the catalyst tools, right? These are hard, these are silicone. You can use wipeout tools. You can use simple things like a skewer.
What's the
What's a wipeout tool?
So these are, it'd be better if I had multiple layers that were wet. You know what? We're just going to switch to this one that's half done. It's not wet, so it's set up. I'm just gonna add some more layers to it, like a new layer on top of this one. So this is dried, mostly. No, that was from something else. Okay, so let's load some red onto this.
So you can have an old painting and change it.
Yeah, it can go over top of an old oil painting.
Oh,
What
wow.
about an old acrylic paint?
Yeah. What's the fat over lean rule? What's the fat over lean rule? Acrylic can't go
Fat
over.
Fat on the bottom and lean over top, I thought.
Right, so acrylic can't go over oil, but oil can go over.
Can go over
Yeah,
acrylic.
yeah. So yes. I just needed to make that clear in my head before I answered. Right, so I have some texture here, so I could like move this way and kind of come across it,
Oh.
and then pick up this, right? So there's, should have went this way and then grabbed it this way to kind of take off
So
that
it's
top.
just in your pressure that has changed that.
So it's so the first way I went this way
Yeah.
with the texture. So I could leave it like that, right? Because I have these kind of blue bumps on it.
Yeah.
But
but I
then
like-
with the scraper totally perpendicular,
Oh, yeah, it's nice.
right? Because when I put it down this way, it was really kind of more like a 45 angle,
Mhm.
and this is straight up and down.
Full pressure.
Okay, so
Do you ever use this with stencils?
yeah, I'm gonna try to use one that I've made. I'm not sure that I use the right paper. That's what okay, so wipeout tool. So these are pretty obvious, right? Like I've used something like that here,
Yeah.
right? That it just takes out that line. These are silicone on the end, and they can make like more
Oh.
finer, like more not painterly, more like drawing things that, right? So you can use this to kind of wipe away, hence wipeout tools.
And you could use that with acrylics as well?
Yes, you can use them with
So
acrylics.
it's what you call the wipe
Wipeout, yeah.
Oh.
I'm just trying to get that off my brush.
Mm-hmm.
So a stencil, right? Well, same idea as a wipeout, but it makes a much finer line. And had I, wiped it off as I went, then this would be a little bit more clear. Right, because I'm getting all that extra
Yeah.
layers of paint. I'm not sure the video can see that. I'm not sure they can see that. I can use like a stylus, right? Something that isn't super sharp,
Yeah.
and do the same thing. That one kind of makes a nicer line than, so that's this one, then the skewer. What else do I have here? I have like what is this? A barbecue skewer. So it's double-ended, right? So it can make two parallel lines at the same time. I could use like an old fork. right? And get 4 lines at the same time. So there's lots of, once you start looking around your house, you're like, oh, I have lots of art material that I didn't know about.
Yeah, true.
Okay, so I'm gonna mix up some with the pigment stick. If you've used the pigment stick recently, then you won't need a little knife, but I haven't used these for a while. Let's see if there's one. There's one that's open. So these are just exact or not exacto. These are straight razor things. And I just cut the end off. You can use all that paint that's in the end, which there's really not that much in the end. And I
can see where they're much wetter than.
Yeah, I'm just gonna cut some off here. If I can get it off my blade.
Stencil crayons.
What color is that blue?
What
on
is,
the stick?
when you're saying that, is it like-
Cerulean.
do they look like that?
Yeah, they look like hers. I used that a lot in my stenciling days.
So chive it, right?
It's,
I saw some in here before.
yeah, I had like plaid. You used to be able to get them in plaid and other
Oh,
brands, and then you always had to cut them off like that.
Okay, so this had the what's this red called? Carmine red from Lucas mixed with it. So it's got this like nice purple. So I can add that on top. And if I'm really light with it, I can drag it over other paint. That's not showing up very well because I didn't use it. Right? No, there's some left on there. Right, I can drag it over top of other texture that I have so that it just hits the high spots.
so what does it have in it to make it wetter than what a chive stick?
Oh, this, it has, it would probably have more linseed oil.
So it's probably more meant for using oil paints and not acrylic.
Yes,
Or-
yeah, it's basically an oil paint
Yeah.
with,
I just
with
wondered
less
because I
linseed
have
oil
a
than normal.
quite good container that was actually given to me of them, and yeah, I find that you lose a lot of it peeling back.
Okay, so we talked about kind of making texture. I'm gonna try the stencil on.
How's that?
Let's try it on this one that's flat. I don't know why, but we'll see. Okay, so I've cut a stencil out of newsprint. And I'm not certain that this was the right thing to do because I looked back through my course notes for stuff and I couldn't find what kind of paper to use for this. So we're gonna try newsprint because it's very, it's hard to get the paint to seep through newsprint. So that was my idea of why to use newsprint. I'm prefacing this because it might be a different type of paper.
And you don't use the other stencils then?
You can, but they will have oil paint all over them. So you'll have to clean them
Oh, yeah.
not in the sink
Oh, yeah, right.
unless you use the water mixable.
Yeah.
So because I have a combination of a whole bunch of different things, I'm gonna use a paper one. I've also, cut out a design that is not, that would not be on a commercially made stencil. So when somebody sees it made, they go, oh, I don't know what stencil number that is, right? Because oftentimes when we use like a mass produced one, there's lots of people that can go, oh, that's stencil number L234,
gee.
right? Because you're like, no, I've used that stencils, right? So, so I have this glaze, right? So this is a lot, because my paint that's down there right now is still really wet. The glaze isn't showing up that well. It's kind of, but it's kind of mixing with the paint that's there. So I'm just kind of going.
But
That
it's
does
sticking
work.
down the paper because it's
Mhm.
slightly wet underneath, right?
Yeah,
So that's a good way to do it.
Yeah.
yeah, and the newsprint is actually working pretty well. I can see
Yeah.
some of the oils coming through a little bit, but it's not so much that it's ruining the paper. Like obviously I'm not going to be able to use this paper over and over. There is a kind of paper I just need to, I think I
But
just
this
need
is
to
great
email
too, though,
somebody.
because then you
Right, so
you
now I
don't have all
have
the
that,
washing.
right,
Oh,
so,
yeah.
so this is, yeah, newsprint is so cheap that really, it's, I don't think it would be
And
a
where do you
big
get
deal.
it?
We have it here in big pads, like they're like
Mm,
big pads, but other places would be like Staples and
oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
okay, so let's just move that out of the way. Oh, you can load a brayer as well. So let's get some of this up here so that I can load it properly.
This just looks like such a fun, relaxing.
So just like inking, like loading a brayer for inking, it's having your paint at the top and rolling in one direction. Because if I go back and forth, I'm loading and then unloading, loading, unloading. So I'm moving in one direction all the time. And then when I come over to my painting, I'm going to move in the opposite way. And actually some of it's going to pick up, right? Because it's still wet and I can
But in a
print it
way,
over there.
that's unique.
Well,
right?
yeah, I can pick up that new stuff and
Yeah.
put it over here. So you can use brayers. And I'm just going to use it for something else as well.
I want the paper.
Okay, so
I quite like the look of the white underneath coming through.
there's a couple ways to transfer stuff. I'm going to do it on this one because it's got more. Okay, what do I need? I need wax paper first.
And this is wax paper for a stencil, to cut a stencil too.
Yeah, you probably could. Yeah. Yeah, so I'm gonna, I've gotten white out. Let's do this a little bit. I want something that's gonna, well, maybe this green. I shouldn't have unloaded my brayer. It's not enough. I'm gonna get enough on there. So I can use this just to like put it down, but I'm gonna put it lightly there. And then I can use a skewer or something else like a stylus. Actually, let's use the stylus. So we'll have a bigger line and I can transfer that paint. That didn't work. Maybe this is too wet. Right over here.
Yeah.
So you can kind of see it works better with a color that's really opposite, right? That line of green.
So you're adding the line as opposed to
Yeah.
carving into it.
Yeah, and you can, I think most of this is wet though. So you can also like, yeah, this is too wet. So sometimes you do have to wait, which I'm not the most patient painter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can now. Yeah.
Yeah, right here. So if I had more, oops, that's now in my wax. Let's just get some more paint out. Yeah, so some of these techniques you need it like a drier surface. See if I can get this color to show up. I've got a lot more paint on there this time. Yeah, that's better.
Oh, yeah, I like that.
Yeah. So wet. I should have gotten another brayer. Oh well, let's just try to use a brush. Be able to get that to stick.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that's transferring with like paper or wax paper. So that one, the ones that are out in the store that are finished, that have those white lines on them, that's how I did that. So I know that's not helpful for the people on the video, but.
I'll go with that.
So this is charcoal. So you could like use it in a block or use it as powder. I'm just going to kind of put it there. So you can mix the cold wax just with this as well, like graphite powder or charcoal. You can just like sprinkle it on. Should be able to transfer it as well.
Is that just charcoal as in charcoal briquette type?
Yeah, you could use that. I think that those have something else in them.
Yeah, because we
Right.
quit using it because it's bad.
Yeah.
for you, yeah.
Yeah, so these are just charcoal. These are charcoal blocks. They're by Derwent, which we did the Inktense. They're the same
yeah.
company.
Now you've got
And
it,
these ones
okay.
are really huge. I like them because I do oftentimes want a bigger mark than like a charcoal pencil, which is really accurate.
Will
Right.
that stick on the way if you've just deposited that powder on the bottom? Does it adhere in there?
It's going to adhere once it dries.
Okay.
So how is that stick different than like a true willow stick?
It's not. It's just it's a little bit more compressed.
Oh, it's compressed.
Yeah, it's more compressed. You could do the same thing with a willow stick, right? Whatever you have. I like these because like the willow sticks I
really
always
black.
break.
Yeah.
Not that these don't break, but like they're
Yeah.
I'm just too heavy-handed with them. So yeah, you can
sell
transfer it.
those?
Yes. So you can transfer it here. That was like drawing on the back of the paper, getting some, and then using a stylus or something to get the mark there. This is just like drawing on dry paint and getting it to stick. And then this is just pouring the
Isn't it
powder.
amazing that bit of black is back here really steps off?
Yeah. It's creating a lot of contrast, right? And that's what our
Yeah.
eye sees in a painting or artwork is those contrasts.
About pastels.
Pastels, you can use pan pastels for sure. They can tone. I didn't pull those out. Most of this is wet. You would do it on a dry or touch dry surface. I can probably
You
get some
could rub
more
some
here.
on from the pan.
So I'm not going to use a sponge because you can use a sponge. So these are pan pastels. These are the iridescent ones, right? So it can just tone
Oh, look how nice.
tone that.
But stick ones, just like you did with the charcoal, you could probably just draw
Yeah,
like highlights on when it's
Yeah.
dry.
yeah.
Ooh, got some pastels.
Yeah, these ones are nice. They're kind of like an eyeshadow, right? That you can apply them with a
Yeah.
little brush or with a sponge or whatever, or your fingers if you have gloves on. They do need gloves because they are like the real,
Oh, are they?
like real pigment.
I got one of the, it's gold or
Yeah.
coppery one
Yeah,
that I thought you could just rub onto it.
yeah, you
Finished
can.
picture.
Yeah, I would just use gloves. I know
Yeah.
that there are people that don't, but it's recommended by the company to
Is it?
wear
Yeah,
gloves.
well,
Yeah,
it's good
because
to
it
know.
is going into
Yeah.
your system.
Yeah.
So how is pan the name? of the
yeah,
brand?
pan pastels. So both P's are capitalized and it's a brand name. Yeah. Okay. So you can use. Let me see if this is the best one. So you can use a solvent like Gamsol to remove some. So I'm not sure I have enough. Actually, I'm just gonna keep this closed until we're ready to use it. Just gonna get some more on here so that this has more of a likelihood to work. I almost swore. Okay, so oh, and with your brayers, always leave them roller up so that they don't stick and dry. Okay, so you can, I wish I had an eyedropper though. I threw it on the floor. Get that? Oh, I should have thought this through before. Okay, I'm gonna put a little bit in the cap maybe. Okay, so you can use the solvent to to remove. Okay, where's my dough scraper? It's so clean. Kind of. You should be able to, and it might be because my paint was too wet. I've never been very good at this part, this one. You should be able to, like those 2 dots,
Does it need to sit longer?
maybe.
You could probably just dab it off with a rag too.
Yeah,
the
this
areas.
makes like it will make a dot where that is, where the drop is what I'm trying to do. But yeah, you can also thin it out with this, like if you're trying to make a glaze. So let's just, am I being too impatient? There, that's better.
Yeah, that's better.
Kind of ish. Yeah, so like
Yeah.
here, yeah. So it's removing the paint because it's a solvent. And so you can also use it to thin the paint. So let's just put some on my palette here. I'm just gonna try to awkwardly dump that back in. And then wipe all of that up with a rag later. So I can use it to kind of thin out. Oh, this is really brown now. I should stop picking colors that are that are complementary. Right, so now I've got some.
It's like pea soup.
It does look
So you basically use that Gamsol to just thin out what you have.
to thin out, and then I could do
Paint over. an
paint
area.
over an area. I'm just trying to find somewhere, or even lift it up with this if I can get it up, and just do like a thin coat of that.
Yeah, I can see that well back
Yeah.
here.
You can use any of the other Gamblin. Oh, this is really getting really dirty. Okay. You can use any of the other Gamblin products like the alkyd gel. So those both add shine and transparency, and they increase the tackiness of the paint as well. And then the Neo Melip, I'm not good at saying some of these names. It increases the shine and smoothness. So it would be kind of like adding a bit of Gamsol, but it's not this. It's not the straight up solvent
It's
one.
a particular one to
Yeah.
give that.
Yeah. And then the Gamsol you can use to, like I showed, to increase the fluidity. And okay, so cleaning. Was there any questions about any of that kind of stuff or things that you want to see?
So you could probably use it to build up depth, like
Yeah.
actual height of the
Yeah.
of the paint areas, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So kind of stack it up. Now, would you do it in layers if you wanted to build up an area so it was kind of a bit dimensional?
Yeah, I would do it in layers. Yeah, so this
Let
is
it dry
this
and
is
then do
working in
another one.
layers, and even waiting that like hour, 2 hours between layers will give you enough stability to do a wet on dry.
Mm.
Right, so
So it dries within a few hours.
it is dry to the touch.
And it's probably just got a skin on it.
Yeah,
too,
it
so
just have a
won't
skin.
mix
Yeah.
and-
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So it makes the oil paint dry faster. Right, so
That's neat.
So
Yeah,
I
I
like
love
that.
so that's just diluted.
this is the one that's diluted. So this is just the 2 greens mixed together that I didn't mix very well on the palette. So they're kind of mixing on
And
the
you're
painting.
using the same whatever you call that.
The dough scraper.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now you haven't mentioned oil pastels.
No.
Is there, no, I mean, could
Okay.
one work with that and maybe a bit with the Gamsol and.
Yep.
And okay.
It's not, they're not something that I usually use, and I was really hesitant to stock them in the store because they're something that don't dry, like the oil pastels. They don't dry unless
Don't
you,
dry.
yeah.
So I'm just curious because I have
Yeah.
some pastels, I've never used them. It'd be a way to use them. So by mixing it with the cold wax medium with the pastel, would that help that kind of staying powder?
I'm
because
not
you're
sure.
mixing with
I
it?
would try it, right? Like I would try, if you have a bit of the cold wax at home already, I would try
Mhm.
it and see what it does, because it does speed up the drying time of oil paint, but oil paint does dry over time, right? So it has that ability, whereas the oil pastels, unless you get like a super expensive brand, like they're never gonna
I
dry.
guess the idea is back in the old days that
Yeah,
you could spray it. with-
yeah. With a fixative, you can
Yeah.
spray it with a fixative, but it's still wet under there. It's not
Yeah.
actually dry.
I knew an artist that used to soak his paper in this, the
Yeah.
Gamsol, and then work with oil pastels.
Okay,
And it was really hard to tell what the medium was
Yeah.
because he could dissolve it like that.
yeah,
I mean, that, to me, that's a very toxic way of working. but-
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
Really.
yeah. I think we've made some advances in science and realizing that some of these things that,
Yeah.
you know, have been around for millennia, not millennia, but like thousands of years are actually
That's
quite
right.
toxic and yeah.
Do you, what was I gonna say?
Oh, sorry.
So those pots, the pot pastels that you had there.
Yeah.
Are they're not like the old style pastels in the sense of being more fixed when you apply them?
No, they still need a fixative.
Okay.
With cold wax, if it's still kind of wet and tacky, the wax will hold that still. When you're using them, I think there's another demo strictly on them that's coming up, but
Oh, really?
yeah, I'm pretty sure I booked that because there's certain products in the store that we always have questions about. So
Mm.
I was trying to cover those ones
Yeah.
first.
Do a great job.
Thank you.
Yeah, you really know you just
You
know
on
these
that
things.
calendar watch for the
Yeah.
second Saturday.
So
yeah.
why was cold wax invented? Like what, just,
To me, I think it was the most of the other mediums made things shiny, right? And they would help a little bit with body, but you really needed a ton of oil paint to get that like really thick application. And this, instead of using, you know, a full tube of oil paint, you can cut it with this, right? Which would decrease your cost. And also it increases the dry time, right? So oil painting is notoriously, right? Like some colors can take months to dry. So
Speed up the drying.
it speeds up the drying time drastically.
So now that is finished, you don't apply another,
You don't need a varnish with cold
Nothing.
wax. You don't need to, there's no finishing coat for
So the-
anything. You can apply the wax clear if you choose to. So that would just make everything uniformly matte and uniformly really the same depth. So I'm not really sure why you would choose
there's
to do that.
wax on some of the hangings out there, right?
There's some cold wax on matted stuff.
Yeah, because I love that.
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, so that's just working on the arches paper, and then doing all the stuff that I want to it and then matting it,
Yeah,
matte and frame. Yeah,
they're beautiful.
thank you. So one thing that I didn't mention about the panels, so we don't have them in the store right now, but if you're using a panel, gesso it first, right? Because you don't want the oil to degrade the plain wood, and the oil's gonna eat the wood, and then you're.
So it's a special panel. that
So
you-
it's like, oh, does that have something on it? So
It's not
something
like-
like this, just gesso it with acrylic gesso in 3 coats,
is
sanding
that what
between.
you use?
This is a pre-gessoed one. I find that some of the pre-gessoed ones are really slippery. So I actually don't like to use them because I'd rather apply my own so that I
Yeah.
get the right tooth.
and could you just give an acrylic color as a base?
Yep. Yeah, or chalk
As
paint.
opposed to gesso?
Yeah, or chalk paint or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. The reason for gesso is usually so that you get the white background, but really that's the only point
Yeah.
of gesso instead of acrylic
Well,
paint
it's
because
different
it's
for
cheaper.
canvas and that too, like I'd use it for doing floor mats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like the reason that people use gesso to start a canvas or a panel is because 1, it's cheap, and 2, it's white, which most people
And it tends to have a little bit of that tooth that you're
Yeah.
talking about,
Yeah.
rather than using something else that you don't know
Yeah.
if it is gonna be too slippery. Gesso
Yeah.
is always kind of.
Yeah, and
good.
I find I bought some of these before I opened the store, like way back in the day, and they are like that first layer just like almost slides right off with this, and it was really, I was getting really frustrated by them. So yeah, that's why I've kind of,
And gesso dries quick. It only takes you a few minutes.
yeah,
You could also, speaking of prepared things, you can get those hard panels, very
Yep.
thin, that are gessoed and ready to go. That would work. You get that texture through there of the
Right.
Mhm.
Like
fabric. But
On a
I
board,
like
is
that
it- Is that like
sometimes.
kind of cardboard? Is that what you're talking?
No, it's probably a piece of wood, but it's got the canvas texture.
oh, the
on it,
canvas panel,
But it's,
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
hard, so you
Yeah.
said, I see
Oh,
what you're
so
saying
would
about
that
hard.
work?
yes, and
they're pre-gessoed,
like
they're
if
ready
you
to go. I
want to
have
go
them.
big, like you could go to Home Depot, get the 4 by 6 foot plywood, gesso that, and then you're ready to go.
Yeah,
Right, you don't have to use something that's commercially made, you can make your own, or something that's slightly askew, right? So I know that there's an encaustic artist that I was pretty sure for the longest time that he was really bad at taking photos. He's not. His canvases are actually like cut so that it looks like I don't know if it's, I don't think the intention is to make it look like a bad photo, but this would be slightly off, but
He's
on
trying to be
purpose.
artistic.
Yeah, he is artistic. He's highly artistic, but
Yeah.
originally I'm like, oh, I wish he could take a good photo.
So
But
like focus and unfocus.
Yeah.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so like this would be slightly off and this would be slightly off, slightly this way. So you're looking at the photo and it's straight on and your eye is doing this weird, trying to make it make sense. And yeah. So anyway, there's lots of things that you can do.
you probably use MDF too.
Yeah,
Thin MDF and
Yeah.
gesso it.
MDF is really heavy and it does
Yeah.
have formaldehyde in it
Oh,
when they
does
make it.
Oh,
Yeah, I
mm.
know
So,
that.
So that's a personal choice as
Yeah.
well.
Because I saw a series of portraits done in cold wax.
Yeah.
And they must have been done with a brush. And I couldn't tell the medium
Yeah.
by looking at it.
Yeah, and some people are really like I like more abstract shapes. So like I was saying before, Wendy can get like a little like the bird was this big and you knew that it was the birds that do that murmur thing. I can't even think of what they are, but like swallows or something, whatever the birds are. Yeah.
Hummingbird.
Not a hummingbird. They're the
No,
ones
it's a
that
small bird. that
they're
they-
the small black birds that they all move together in like
Oh,
that
yeah,
wave. I
swallow.
think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, she made a whole bunch of them and they looked real. Like her background was very abstract-y landscape, but yeah. Anyway, yeah,
That's talent.
Yeah.
she's very talented. So
That's amazing.
yeah, so I'm gonna stop this video or
I love that.
Yeah,
Right
that's great.
there.
Yeah, there's a lot there. A
Oh.
lot of information there.
Oh, I know. I went, Kate, that last one you gave, what was the one we saw before?
We saw
The Derwent one.
stencils
Derwent. I
and-
mean, I just
yeah.
gotta play it over again.
yeah, yeah,
And I played the last one you did. What was after the Derwent?
a stencils.
Stencils,
And
yeah.
I missed that.
It's just
because
so
of
good
Oh,
to have
because
them
of
on
the weather
YouTube,
was
too.
Yeah,
crazy.
I'd watched
Yeah.
it. She forwarded it to
Yeah.
me and I was just like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'd watched.
have to
Well,
look
then
at
I
that
came
one.
in
Yeah.
last
Yeah, they're
week
good.
and bought more
The
stencils.
Derwent was amazing. I'm using them, but I'm using them in one way. Just I'm
Yeah.
using them on fabric, the intense pencils, but just all the other different things. It's just
So
amazing.
I'm just gonna wind up this video and then we can keep talking.
Yeah.
So that was Gamblin Cold Wax at Upwards Art Studio. My name's Amelia Kramer. Follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. Our username is at Upwards Art Studio, so we're not hard to find. Yeah, and in 2 weeks I didn't look up what the demo is, but I'm sure it's something fabulous.